Siftpop podcast is recorded in front of a live internet audience.
Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that also needed an ice bath after just seeing the movie. It's Siftpop. Welcome to Siftpop, streaming live on Mixlr every Friday afternoon, or available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks!
Patrons get those perks.
Blon.
I'm Aaron Dicer from YourMovieFriend.com. I'm joined by Andrew Ormsby from Flick Freaks.
Ahoy!
And each week we'll be joined by a pop culture guru to chat about movies, television, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And today's guru, from Deezus Take the Reel, it's Devon!
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Deezus here, and I was definitely craving an ice bath and a lot of vodka after this movie.
Yeah, there's plenty of that in there as well. Man, it's good to have you back.
It is good to be back. Like I said, I was like, episode 100, this is an exciting episode to come back on. And I was here last time. I was here when we talked John Wick 2, so it'll be a nice little...
stylistic violence bookends for you.
Yeah,
you mentioned episode 100. This is episode 100 of Siftpop. It's weird because technically it's like 180 something, if you actually go by the number of episodes in the feed, but, the way we label them, this is the Big Daddy. This is the century mark for Siftpop.
Yeah.
Did you ever think it would happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I believed in you, Aaron.
Oh, thanks, man.
I knew you could do it.
I appreciate it. We're going to have a blast today. We're going to talk Atomic Blonde, the new Charlize Theron movie that's out. We're also going to talk about her best ever movies. We'll, of course, do Buried Treasure at the end. We've got
Sift Quest
going on there. And also, if you want to hear Devon's Sift Shame, by the way, the movies that he is ashamed or might be ashamed that he hasn't seen, make sure you support and get the patron pre-show. But first, let's do some Do We Care?
Every single week I scour the internet to find out what is going on in the entertainment world, and I pick some topics for us to decide whether or not we care about them or not. Only 2 this week, because number 2 is the big one. But number 1, Mahershala Ali is the front runner for the star of Season 3 of True Detective.
So, wait, front runner or already decided?
He got confirmed.
I thought,
the front runner announcement was I heard that announcement like 2 weeks ago, but no, he's confirmed now.
I think it was a Collider I was reading yesterday, but Season 3 is still not even confirmed yet. I guess
it's
you can't confirm an actor for a show that's not even confirmed yet.
So you're saying they're not even sure that they're doing another season of True Detective, but if they do, he will be the star. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I understand that. Whatever the case, man, Season 2 ruined any good graces I had for the show, so they'll have to prove it to me again. I'll have to hear some bumblings in the pop culture, universe for me to check it out.
Now, is Season 2 as bad as everybody says, or is it just compared to Season 1?
Have you not seen it?
Oh, I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
But I'm trying to look from an outside looking in perspective, or an inside looking out looking in perspective, because, it's not as good as Season 1, but is it as bad as everybody says it is? Because I think people are trashing it way more. I thought that Vince Vaughn was really good.
See, until you said that, I didn't even remember he was in it. Yeah,
it's because nobody can understand a word Colin Farrell says in that entire series.
Yeah, I did not enjoy watching a bit of Season 2. I guess there was one scene I remember. There was a bus shootout. Maybe there was a shootout at a bus.
That's the big climax of the season.
See, I haven't watched Season 2 yet either. I've only watched Season 1.
I did not enjoy it at all. Season 1 is really good, though. Yeah. And so I get what you're saying, but I just did not enjoy Season 2 at all.
Okay.
I like how if the show does continue to go, I like how it's formatted with this, like, switching the lead actors for each season and stuff, like, kind of like a, American Horror Story kind of deal, the way they do it.
An
I think
anthology
it's cool.
show.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool, so I'm excited.
Fargo's been the best at that, though. Fargo has been the best anthology show on television, in my opinion.
It kind of has a linear... I haven't seen this newest season. I haven't seen a single episode yet.
Yeah.
But, like, Season 1 and Season 2 are connected.
Not really. Just barely by the thinnest of threads.
Yeah. In case people haven't seen it, I won't spoil it, but...
Yeah.
I think that... Okay, anywho. But we haven't talked about Mahershala Ali at all. I think he'd be great.
Well, of course.
Oh, man.
I'll take him in literally anything. Like,
right?
It does not matter what he's casted in.
When
I'll
has
say
he
yes.
been bad? Yeah. But I mean, of course, I also really like Colin Farrell. And,
I love Colin Farrell.
I do like Vince Vaughn, and yet, they managed to not put together a good season of True Detective. So I think a lot of it has to do with the case. A lot of it has to do with the writing. So we'll see where it goes.
Okay. So that's going to wrap it up for that one. But here is the big thing that we are going to be discussing. San Diego Comic-Con has just wrapped up.
Yeah.
There are 3 things that I know you don't see anything coming out of Comic-Con, no trailers or anything.
Well, I see what has come out of Comic-Con. I just don't watch any of the video stuff. I don't watch any of the trailers or sneak peeks or those kind of things.
But you know what's going on.
Right, yeah. I know there was a Ready Player One trailer that came out.
That's the best thing to come out of Comic-Con.
Was it?
Oh, yeah. Ernest, I read Ernest Cline's book off the recommendation from our good friends over at Horrible Movie Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite books now. I've read it multiple times now. Normally, I'll read one book and just move it aside, unless it's Dark Tower. But also now Ready Player One. In that trailer, I don't know how they did it.
Okay.
And that's all I'm going to say.
Well, you've got me intrigued.
Another cool thing was a movie called Bright.
Okay.
Max Landis wrote it. Wrote the script for it, and it's David Ayer is directing.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like
David Ayer,
Ayers.
Netflix original film starring Will Smith.
So it'll come out on Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay.
Will Smith and Joel Edgerton. And,
Man, I like all the pieces.
It's not
interesting.
what you think it is.
It looks
Well, that's
it looks
fine.
interesting.
I just like the pieces. And see, that's what I want to know. That's what I want to know before going to. I just want to know the pieces. I don't want to know anything about the
synopsis.
story or any. I just want to know. I just need to know who's acting in it, who's directing it, maybe the genre. But other than that, I love going in blind. So.
This one's looking like gritty fairy tale.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
For the genre, if you could put a genre on
That's
this one.
Yeah, it's genreless.
Technically, all fairy tales are gritty. I mean, the invention of fairy tales was a very dark thing. So
thanks, Grimm's. And Aesop. Final thing, 2 trailers for shows that came out. We had Westworld Season 2.
Oh, okay.
And Stranger Things Season 2.
Both shows I'm already in on, so I don't necessarily even need a trailer to know that I'm going to watch them.
Stranger Things was the big one. Because it comes out a couple days before Halloween.
Yeah, I think the 27th.
Yeah, 27th. And perfect timing.
Yeah,
I cannot
still got
wait.
like 3 months. 3 months to wait.
See, because I'm in the middle of you two, because I don't watch a bunch of trailers, but I do watch some. And it is Comic-Con, so I was like, okay, I'll watch a little bit more than I usually do. But that Stranger Things trailer gave me goosebumps. Like,
nice,
it's good.
Good. What about some of the big stuff, like the Marvel stuff or Pixar stuff?
Thor Ragnarok. There's been a couple trailers
or Justice League. Even was there anything with Justice League?
Another trailer for that, and it looks good.
It looks good.
It looks good. But then again, the trailer...
Devon's not quite as sold as Andrew.
I mean, it looks good, but
here's
not
the thing.
good.
I will say this, and hopefully this isn't spoilers for you. I think that DC is learning from their mistakes, and that one of the big missing elements to their movies was humor. Mm-hmm. And it looks like they're addressing it, especially in these trailers. Like I said before, it looks good, but BVS looked good.
Yeah,
from the trailers.
Yeah, I mean they're commercials. They're meant to look good. They're marketing material.
Exactly. But man, Thor,
that trailer was
that movie
good, was good, like really good.
Oh, I said this, and I said this has the potential to, and I wasn't being hyperbolic. This has the potential to be the best Marvel movie.
Whoa!
I think it gave us some stuff that.
They must have put together a really nice trailer.
Like, it really, it gave us things that we didn't know, but at the same time, like, this is still a trailer that has not, like, spoiled the movie for you. Like, I still couldn't tell, like, I mean, I know the gist. Like,
I'll refrain from...
It does what a trailer does, or should do.
Yeah, I'll refrain from going into how it still spoils the movie, whether it, quote-unquote, spoils the movie or not. But I get what you're saying, that it doesn't spoil plot points or those kind of things.
It looks fun. It looks fun. They even announced the runtime for Thor Ragnarok, and it's the second shortest Marvel movie, which is interesting.
Oh, nice.
So it's gonna be real lean and mean. I'm excited for it. It looks like a blast.
Do you know the director Taika Waititi?
No.
Did you ever see What We Do in the Shadows, that vampire movie?
And he did
very Flight of the Conchords-esque.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Like quirky comedic kind of thing? Okay.
And then he did...
Actually, he works with Flight of the Conchords. He did a couple episodes of the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's real good friends with Jermaine Clement. But and he did... last year, he did... Hunt for the Wilder People.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I did see Hunt for the Wilder People. Mm-hmm. So
I forgot he did that. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay.
Super talented guy.
And now he's doing the big Marvel movie.
Yep, big Marvel movie.
That tends to be the way it goes these days, you know. Yeah. They get directors that they feel like are new enough that they can control, that don't have the, like the oomph to be able to stand up to them. Which
like Edgar Wright.
Yeah, that's why it didn't work. Yep.
Well, that's a great point. It didn't necessarily work with Edgar Wright. So you could also say the same with the Star Wars, kerfuffle was also with the directors was one of those things where, with
the Solo movie.
Yeah. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, because Lord and Miller, they weren't going to be bullied around.
Right,
not
exactly. They had some clout. Lord and Miller have some clout. So it makes sense when you're shepherding these big expanded universes like Star Wars or Marvel that you bring somebody in who doesn't have the clout to, stand up to you. Because at the end of the day, somebody has to make the calls on that stuff. And in these cases, it's those shepherds, But on the positive side of it, too, think about what they're doing for these smaller, up-and-coming directors, and these are, some people haven't seen any Taika Waititi movies because they're so small, these small indie movies. And after this, people are going to be like, I'm going to watch anything that guy does. Absolutely.
You got to think about what they're doing for these small directors as well. Scott Derrickson is somebody I'm like, okay, I'm interested to see what he's going to do next after Doctor Strange,
Yeah.
So there's a good and a bad side to it.
No, absolutely.
Another bad side is whenever you put somebody down, like not put somebody down, but like whenever you hinder somebody like that, you're dampening any originality that could come to the movies. And that's what people are starting to complain about with the Marvel movies is how they seem so copy-paste style-wise from each one. The only one different was Guardians of the Galaxy, but now all of these movies are starting to look like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, I don't know that I buy that completely. I get what you're saying. I think there's a balance somewhere, right? Because again, somebody has to shepherd the material, right? Somebody has to be the overall creative vision force. When you bring in like a unique director who has their own ideas, you can let them operate and start to make some of those decisions, but you have to find the balance of, well, when are they changing? Like, for instance, the Star Wars thing. If they really were turning that into, Han Solo as Ace Ventura, somebody has to step in and go, no, look, there's an overall tone to this that we have to, keep handling. So there is a balance there somewhere between like the shepherding and the freedom to create your own thing. So it's tricky. It can be really tricky, I think. So I don't know, but it'll be, if they've got Thor down, it looks like, maybe they've got a good one. And I've heard, Rian Johnson didn't give any problems with, episode 8 or 9. So, it'll be interesting to see as these kind of things continue to grow, kind of what happens. And
then there was a leaked Infinity War Avengers trailer, which I did not see.
A leaked trailer? What do you mean?
Somebody recorded it.
Oh, it was at Comic-Con. I thought you meant leaked at Comic-Con, like in a back room somewhere. Somebody was like, hey, everybody, I got the stuff you're craving.
They had the trailer at Comic-Con.
Okay.
And then people were recording it and then posted it online. But
I just assumed that would happen every time. At Comic-Con, like I assumed, if you're releasing
some, I don't know they're getting better at policing it though, because I hear that
live
in
bands.
Certain ones they like turn your phones off, like new policies and whatnot. So I mean they're getting better at catching it, but I mean it's gonna happen every year.
I just assumed if you were releasing a trailer at Comic-Con, you would release it the same day online. Like
no.
I just
see not the same day, because like that's what then what are you gaining from Comic-Con? They want to make
being in the room, I guess
being in the room, but they want to make it a little special, and like now studios are doing it like a few days afterwards. They're just like let them have their thing for a few days, and then everybody else can have it too.
Yeah.
They're really good at policing, because whenever Godzilla came out at Hall H back in 2012, they showed the trailer there, and it was a year and a half before it was actually released online, and nobody recorded.
There was also, secrets can still be kept. The secret of M. Night's movie Split had been, they showed that movie to a group of people, a year and a half before it came out or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know how they pulled that off.
And that stayed locked until the movie came out.
Well, you've had to sign waivers before.
Yeah.
So.
But signing a waiver and then
NDAs,
exactly. And all it takes is somebody thinking, well, I can tell my parents, or I can, and then the parents are like, well, I can tell my best friend, and the best, it just takes that, that kind of thing happening. But did you see, was there a trailer for Coco, the new Pixar movie, or anything? Was that
there's been a lot of trailers for Coco.
Okay.
And normally with Pixar and stuff, D23 just happened the week before.
That's true. D23 kind of drops all the Star Wars and Pixar, stuff, so.
And that's going to wrap it up for Comic-Con, as well as Do We Care?
All right, let's move on to our review of Atomic Blonde.
I chose this life. And someday, it's going to get me killed. But not today.
Atomic Blonde is about Agent Lorraine Broughton, who combines spycraft, sensuality, and savagery, willing to deploy any of her skills to stay alive on an impossible mission. Sent alone into Berlin to retrieve a priceless dossier from within the destabilized city, she partners with embedded station chief David Percival to navigate her way through a deadly game of spies.
Nice use of the word dossier.
Well, thank you.
That was nice. That was a nice word.
Spelled dossier. It's spelled dossier, but it's pronounced dossier. Speaking of spelling and pronouncing, Charlize Theron stars in this, and David Percival, of course, played by James McAvoy. So some good talent here, but let's go first with what are our general thoughts about Atomic Blonde. Did you like it, love it? It was just okay, dislike it, hate it?
Aaron, you go first.
I'll go first, sure. I am on probably the mid to lower end of liked it. So I did like it, but, just kind of crossing over that from it was just okay to liked it. What about you, Devon?
I'm sitting in about the same spot. I mean, I liked it. I almost really liked it, but I liked it.
Yeah.
So I'm more on the upper end of liked it, I'll say, I guess.
Okay. Andrew?
I'm with you on the lower end of liked it.
Wow. Yeah. Like we all feel the same way. I was hoping somebody really loved this movie and could just go all out for it.
No, there's a lot of problems with it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Let's talk about the good stuff first, though. What are some of the things that you really enjoyed about it?
Style.
Yeah.
The style of this film is so great. It mixes the fight choreography as something you'd see in like a modern John Wick or even Jason Bourne we were talking, except less shaky cam.
Or I got some Equalizer vibes too, like on her kind of using what's around her and whatnot. And the action in this movie is just phenomenal. It's so fun to watch. I mean, almost up there with, I would say almost on par with The Raid. Like it's up there.
It's really good. Let's separate the two things. Let's separate style from the fight scenes, because I think there are two really good things to say about this movie that are separate.
Like I was saying, it has the modern style of that kind of combat, but it mixes it in with that 80s Euro punk. You wouldn't normally think of mixing those two, but they meld together so well.
Yeah, it was interesting with this Cold War setting. I liked it being around this like significant event, but then they even said at the beginning, they're like, that's not what this movie is about. But it's there and it's ingrained in like the setting, like so like, mixing it in with, the late 80s and stuff. I mean, because the soundtrack of this thing is
movie is
with the soundtrack.
So aware of the time it exists in such a good way. The music, the vehicles, the clothes, like it's very, and not in like a condescending way where it's like just using that kind of nostalgia, but where it's actually building a stylistic universe with that stuff. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought it really, set up a lot of the beauty of the movie really well.
Yeah.
As far as the style goes.
I think this movie is going to be defined by its soundtrack, though. I'm with Devon, just by how good it was. And the simple fact that it mixed in, like, German remakes and, versions of songs. Some of those, like the 99 Red Balloons is obviously originally German, but a lot of those other songs were English songs they redubbed by other artists in German.
They did the foreign language versions of, a lot of that stuff, which I thought was really interesting, too. So that was cool. We can talk about the fight. I wasn't trying to keep us from talking about the fight choreography. And not only that, it's a big part.
And not only just the soundtrack itself, the way they integrate the soundtrack as well. A lot of the times, like whether it's playing in somebody's headphones or it's in the car radio during a chase scene or something. I like the way they integrated the soundtrack as well. I think they did it pretty smoothly.
Yeah, and it sounded so great, like just so good,
and it just fit. Like I mean, it really fit, and it the look of the film as well. With these, you have the coldness of Berlin, but then you also have these like neon colors and stuff, and it just fit. Like so, the style of it is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to move on then talk about the action a little bit?
I mean, that's what's...
Because you're right. People have been comparing it to John Wick, which I think is actually the worst comparison. I can see some of the... Like, there's some headshots and some, violence, like in John Wick. But John Wick is relentless. This movie isn't as relentless.
No, and I think, and this is where having not seen the trailers, kind of gives a different opinion, because, like, the marketing kind of sells it as a more nonstop action romp. And, they don't sell it on, all the other spy stuff going on, because this is inherently a spy movie. John Wick is very much an assassin movie, very much about more of the guns and stuff.
Yeah.
This one's about spy and espionage and the hand-to-hand stuff. So I think it's hard to compare to really any of them. I mean, you got shades of Bourne, you got shades of Bond in there, but I think inherently it does stand on its own feet of, Charlize Theron, Lorraine being her own, BA character.
I will say this about the action. I've always championed action heroes who can get hurt, and she gives just as much as she gets in this movie.
Yeah.
I won't spoil it, but there's a one shot.
Well, it's definitely played as one shot. Yeah,
16 minutes.
There's some big camera whips that I assumed were taken cuts, but yeah,
you can say the same thing about Birdman.
I mean, you can say that about a lot of
absolutely.
But it's designed to look like one shot.
Absolutely.
Like kind of like the Creed fight scenes and like things like that. But that stairwell scene, just see the movie for that alone almost. Like that stairwell scene is quite impressive.
All the action scenes are really impressive. There aren't as many of them as I think a lot of people were expecting, but the one when it happens, I was really impressed.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great because I mean, this one was from David Leitch. I don't know how to say his name, but there were two of them on John Wick, and then they kind of split up. He came and did this, and then Stahelski ended up doing John Wick 2. But both of them had stuntman background. They were both stunt coordinators and choreographers and stuntmen themselves before they started directing movies. So I mean, you really see like they have a good understanding of it. Everything's in camera. You're not seeing these crazy quick cuts and shaky cam because they've been there. This is what they do.
Oh yeah, I was really impressed with the camera work. That it was handheld, so there's a little bit of shakiness.
Yeah,
but it was very purposely not shaky cam.
Very minimal.
It wasn't trying to hide anything by having the handheld view. It really let you in on the choreography and what was going on, which I loved. More action needs to do that, and you're right. That does come from that stunt coordinating background. You can really see that on the screen. I think one thing we mentioned even before we started was how much like James Bond she is, and you mentioned Bond a little bit too. And I think a lot of that has to do with she's almost Charlize in this movie is almost playing James Bond in some ways. She's very suave,
sexual.
She falls into bed with, the first contact she meets. She's always downing a, vodka. She has her drink of choice like Bond does. There's some really interesting Bond connections to kind of what's going on in the spy game too.
That's really where I was going from. The over-sexualization and the alcohol is not something you'd see in John Wick or Jason Bourne. That's straight up Bond.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. But in what I also like I said, how it kind of can stand on its own feet, and it's interesting whenever people were having the conversations about like, oh, what if we had a female Bond? But then people's counter arguments are, why don't we just have a female original character themselves? And boom, here we go. We're giving Lorraine, and that's essentially what we're giving. We get enough Bond flavor to be kind of satisfied to be like, oh, like if there was a female Bond, this would be it. But at the same time, she very much is her own person, I believe.
I totally agree. It's also interesting. I'm going to tread lightly here too, because I want to be careful in saying this, but I also believe they made a purposeful choice almost to shoot her, like film her like a man action star as opposed to a female action star. Some of those opening scenes with her taking the ice bath, those kind of things, they feel very, like it felt like exactly how you would shoot it if it were, Tom Hardy or, somebody like that with the coming up out of the ice. And they weren't worried about, I guess I'll just say it this way. They weren't worried about like hiding certain parts of her body or, things like that. It was really interesting the way they decided to film her in this movie. Almost felt like a male action star in some ways.
They sexualized, because they didn't sexualize
exactly.
her.
It didn't feel sexualized.
They empowered her sensuality at times, but they didn't, they didn't expose it.
Other than the sex scene, which is in this movie, in those other scenes where she is in various states of undress, it didn't feel sexualized to me. It felt like it was, here's this person, this raw, vulnerable person, which is what you feel a lot of times, with the male action stars. So.
And it's like, and I also love how, like, she's fighting these, like, when she's fighting people and these henchmen, like, there weren't any of those times where they're like, oh, like, making sex jokes and misogynistic.
Right, yeah,
they're just fighting. They're fighting her as if she is a man. Like, they didn't shy away from, like, they didn't even make any, like, lame, oh, I can't hit a woman jokes. I don't think there was one hit a woman joke in this movie, which I really appreciate.
I think, I've got mad respect for that. Like
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool the way they did that.
And her performance is astounding.
Charlize Theron is always good.
Where's she been for action movies this whole time?
Well, you've got Mad Max, right? Like, which was kind of her, going into that role.
Even though it's not a good movie, she is very convincing as an action star and Flux. Like,
that's true.
It's not a great movie.
It's true.
It's not a great movie, but I mean, she
shows
her her action chops in that one big time though. So I'd love to see Charlize Theron, but she can do anything though. That's why she does everything that she can.
Before we get off the action scenes, the one influence that I wanted to bring up that I haven't heard anybody else talk about, but me, that I think is very prominent here. And I'll say it, and it'll seem weird, and then I'll explain it.
We might be thinking the same thing.
Jackie Chan. There's some real interesting stuff that she does with her environment.
Yeah.
And there's also an interesting sense of humor to a lot of these action scenes as well. I don't know about the audience you watched it with.
I'm going to talk about that, but yeah.
The audience we watched it with was dying at some of this like violence in this action.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is kind of that same like hard to kill kind of sense of humor that you'll see in a lot of the Jackie Chan stuff as well. So I saw a little bit of a tie there.
The biggest Jackie Chan like influence I saw was the use of her wardrobe while she is fighting.
Yeah, sure.
Because Jackie Chan, he was always, taking people's gun with his shirts and hanging from stuff like
or a garden hose or just environmental,
especially
action.
Her wardrobe, her shoes, even in this movie playing a big role.
Yeah. What was I going to say?
You're going to talk about the humor, I think, a little bit more.
Yeah, but that's in cons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
All
good.
right.
That's going to go in cons for me too. And I just want to give a big shout out to James McAvoy because I mean, I love him. I always have loved James McAvoy. I mean, he steals a good portion of this film for me. Honestly,
he's really good.
I thought he was an interesting. I think honestly, he's the most. We get the most depth out of his character out of any of the characters, even more than Charlize Theron's character for me.
I think that's fair.
And I think he ended up being one of the more interesting people in this movie, other than watching Charlize herself. But I mean, he can just it's a complete switch up from what we've seen this year from him. But I mean, James McAvoy has so many different shades.
He's a character actor at his heart.
And I think it was a fun role for him to play as well. But it was also something very different.
I also like John Goodman in this. I thought he was great.
Yeah,
it's his typical awesome Goodman self.
Oh, yeah. I think we could use more Goodman as usual, but I think that's always the case with Goodman.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me how the humor was a negative, because I didn't really see the humor as a negative part. I actually enjoyed kind of how funny it was.
Well, here's what it did for me. The film tonally shifts about 2/3 of the way through.
Okay.
I think the beginning of this film has a lot of lightheartedness mixed in with the action, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
And then the film, it's for the better of the film, but the film shifts, and then all that humor disperses about a third or the final third of this movie.
I didn't feel that.
Because the last part of this movie I didn't think was all that good. And I think it might be because the humor disappears.
Okay.
Now, films have tonal shifts all the time.
Sure.
I understand that, but I think it's to this one's detriment that it actually happens.
All right, maybe we can talk about it in spoilers, because I remember a lot of humor even towards in fact, the very last line of the movie is one of the biggest punchlines.
I think the humor works in general for me. I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I thought the first act is a little messy, a little scatterbrained, and then I think it starts once we really get to dive into the plot itself, which that's going to be a negative later.
Yeah, that's definitely on my negative.
For me, in the second act, it really starts to tighten up a little bit together, and I think it finishes off really strong in the third act as well. But I think the first act, for me, is a little scatterbrained. The humor, for the most part, works. Like, I didn't, need more of it, but I guess I could use a little less, because sometimes it didn't always hit.
So I'm of two minds here. One, I agree with Andrew. I actually think the end of this movie doesn't work very well, but I have different reasons for that.
I have an issue with the end too. Which ending?
This movie has too many plot twists.
Yes, and they're all piled on each other right at the end. Like, it feels like they wanted to save their plot movement all for that last 10-15 minutes. And it was like, for me, you can tell me some of that stuff sooner when it becomes more appropriate for the story, and kind of spread that out a little bit. And I think the movie feels different that way.
I think the film wanted to distinguish itself so badly as a spy film that they're just like, all right, more convolution, more plot twist, more backstabbing, more this, like, and it just became way too much. Like, the plot is just like, I would just, at one point, I'm just like, what is going on? I was just like, can we get to another fight scene, please? Like, because the dialogue for me is a little bit flat in this as well.
I think what I'm talking about with the humor is actually kind of mixed in with that, because they try. now I'm thinking about it, I think they try and replace humor with plot twists. Because this movie kind of gives Wild Things a run for its money whenever it comes to plot twists, but whenever Wild Things does it, it's tongue-in-cheek, where I think this movie's trying to take itself seriously with all these plot
very
twists.
Much is. Very much.
It's like the last 30 minutes of this movie, they're like, hey, why don't we just make it Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and cram it into a half an hour thing?
Yeah, and the movie hasn't done the story work to pay that off. Like, it hasn't it hasn't done the, it is such a MacGuffin movie. Like, we never really understand this,
Is the MacGuffin the dossier?
Yeah,
yeah.
Like, and it's just like, we never really get a full understanding of why that's so important, why it's so important to the individual characters. We have a broad view, but it just, like, I just wasn't invested.
I understand the importance of it, but I think because, like, it's a list of people. All it was a list of people who spies for who, blah, blah, blah. And the reason you don't understand it, don't care about it, is because for me, I don't think, like I said, we didn't get enough depth from a lot of the characters.
Right.
Like, I mean, to be honest, like, as much as I love Charlize Theron's performance and she's great in it, I couldn't tell you, 3 things about her character other than, she likes vodka. Like,
I don't even remember her name.
Exactly.
Right, like, I had to look it up.
Like, there's a difference between...
It's Lorraine. By the way,
Lorraine, okay.
Yeah, her name's Lorraine, and it's a difference between, whenever you talk about a James Bond film and you reference them as James Bond, or John Wick, you reference them as John Wick, and half the time I've been just saying Charlize's character because she does
it's not
what she
a
needs
great
to do.
Name. It needed a little more punch.
Yeah, it could have used some more punch, but if you're not intrigued into these characters and whatnot, you don't really care for the plot twists and the backstabbing, So I think that also kind of undermines the value of the plot itself.
Yeah. And because of that, because the other stuff isn't as interesting, then you're left with just the style, which is great, and just the action, which is great. And anytime one of those two things isn't really capturing your attention, there's nothing really for you to, like, think about or go deeper with or really hold on to.
Yeah. And that's my thing with it. Like, the movie's cool and everything, but it's kind of just that. It's it's cool. Like, okay, it's cool.
Aaron, was it you who made the comparison to The Raid with the action and the combat? Was that you?
I think that was Devon, actually.
So, it's like that, but that's not the majority of this movie.
Right.
Exactly.
The Raid can get away with it because that's all it's doing. Like, the Raid doesn't have character development. It has the Raid has no story. I mean, the story in the Raid is very, very minute, but people love it because it's nonstop, crazy, amazing action, and you just go in for that experience.
And that's where, you can, again, make the John Wick comparison, though, because John Wick, its story, it's very simple. But at the same time, you cared about John
exactly
so much.
Even though it's simple, it's meaningful. Those are two different things, And this one just wasn't meaningful.
And it's like, a lot of people kind of complain about the overuse of music in this movie, but it's like, if the movie didn't have so much music, I would not care about what was going on in between the action scenes half as much as I did. Because, I mean, at least I was like, well, at least I got this sweet tune to listen to while I listen to this meaningless dialogue. So I was like...
Can we just say, though, and I think we've done a fairly good job of this, because we really did praise this movie a lot at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
This movie definitely has moments. Like,
there's a lot to like.
This is a movie you almost want to go back to, because there are several moments where you're like, I want to watch that again. I want to see that again.
The stairwell scene for me is the scene I keep coming back to. Like, I got to watch that again.
The stairwell scene, or even the apartment scene. Like, there's some really cool, incredible stuff in the apartment scene.
Literally all of the action scenes. Like, I can't think of any action scene where I'm just like, I don't like this. Like, even when you get James McAvoy getting to kick a little butt, and it's like, okay, cool, I'm into this too. And like, I mean, I'll definitely revisit for the action alone.
Oh, there's a scene with McAvoy and a knife that is
my God. But that's the best humor in the movie. That scene right there is the best humor in the movie.
Yeah. So I think we've done a good job just kind of saying there's a lot to like here, but unfortunately some of the big stuff just doesn't work, and so it does bring the movie down quite a bit.
So now the question that always comes up with these movies, and I was thinking about, if we do get a sequel to this movie, I think the sequel would be beneficial, though, because I think they could fix a lot of the issues that they did have, because they have a very good base there. Like, they have a good skeleton for this.
Because I don't know what is being said at the end of this movie. I think I understand.
I mean, we'll talk about it in spoilers.
Yeah, so
so maybe more sequel talking spoilers.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. Well, there you go. I think that's probably a recommend from all three of us, even with its, major flaws.
check it out.
A half-hearted recommend, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. Like if you just want to see her kick butt, you want to see a spy movie. Yeah, it's gonna fill those holes, and it's better than other spy movies. Like I'm gonna rewatch this over Man from U.N.C.L.E. And I enjoyed Man from U.N.C.L.E. as well. But if I had to pick between the two of those,
interesting.
I'd definitely rewatch this one.
I think I might go with Man from U.N.C.L.E.
I might go with Man from U.N.C.L.E. too. I enjoyed that more than most, I think. But yeah, it's definitely, and I guess we did say this as well. I mean, it's definitely a rated R spy movie too. It definitely takes full advantage of its R rating, both in the violence, the way that John Wick did. Also, we already talked about the sexuality and the nudity and that kind of stuff. So it's definitely kind of almost old school in that way.
And it wasn't excessive either. Like I think it was a very the sweet spot of the violence for this movie, because they didn't oversaturate you with
it's true.
it. Yeah, I know it's a weird to think about. There's a sweet spot for violence.
I thought you were gonna say it was the sweet spot for nudity, and that's what I was laughing at.
No, I mean I'll say that as well. I mean,
yeah.
Let's go to the best ever challenge. We're doing Charlize movies. We'll do our top 3. We'll go from number 3 to number 1. Don't forget, if you've got it ranked higher, feel free to trump it so we can wait till talk about it until it's at whoever's got it at the highest mark.
I'm gonna get trumped all over this thing. I know it.
I feel like I'm gonna get trumped.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like I don't rank some movies as high as some other people do. Andrew, why don't you kick us off? What's your number 3 Charlize movie?
Number 3, I got Monster.
Nice.
Either of you guys?
Nope.
It's my number 2, but we can go and we can talk about it now still. But
trump me, man.
I mean,
Devon, this
right
is how
there.
It works, man.
It's like,
you had it at number 2.
My 2 and 3 are very close. So I mean,
all right. Well, I'm trumped. Aaron, what do you got?
My number 3 is That Thing You Do.
Okay.
Which you look back at that and you're like, that's Charlize, but it is. That's her in that movie. And I absolutely love That Thing You Do. It's one of my favorites. So yeah. Had to mention that one.
So what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a recent one that I talked on the show, Kubo.
I will trump Kubo.
Okay.
That was one of my honorable mentions. I knew one of you guys would.
Oh, yeah. I knew Kubo was going to come up on this one. But, since we're going to trump that, and so I can chime in about Monster.
Yeah.
Monster is that's really the one that, kind of put her on the map. And when you talk about physical transformations, I mean, because Charlize is one of the most gorgeous human beings on the planet. I don't even think she's from this planet, honestly.
Yeah.
But, and then in that movie, she is so unrecognizable and terrifying. But I mean, she she's had a lot done to her teeth in her movies, I've realized. Cause she had to get teeth fixed after this movie. But she had them intentionally make her teeth bad for Monster and stuff. She really dove in. It's an intense movie. It's a hard movie to watch.
Who just did Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important that we notice the physical transformation she makes in that movie, but also that we know that it's not just a physical transformation that she's making in that movie. Like the character work in that movie that she does is really good too. And she won the Oscar for that, right?
Yes.
She won the Academy Award. Yeah. Well deserved. It's just a great performance.
She ran away with the award that year for that one.
That was 2003.
2003, yeah. And I think that's also where she kind of started with, she's, like I said, she's so gorgeous and everything, but because she's such a phenomenal actress, and that's kind of where she was able to go past she's always going past her beauty and attractiveness and the sexuality, and it's we're not worried about that. Even though she was playing a prostitute in that movie, we're still just that's not what she's about, and that's what you can really appreciate from her.
Yeah. So that's your number 2?
Yeah, that was my number 2.
All right, Andrew, what's your number 2?
Mad Max Fury Road.
And that's my number 2 as well. So let's just go ahead and talk about it.
Are you going to trump us? Mad Max?
Mad Max is number 1.
Okay. So, yep. All right. Go ahead and...
I think we're back to your number 1. If we're going
we're still back to your number 1.
It just got really confusing there for a second.
Yeah, it did. Okay.
But go ahead with your number 1.
The Road.
Oh, interesting. Talk about it a little bit.
It's one of my favorite books, and this movie is one of, if not the most depressing movie besides Schindler's List, ever. It is so sad. It's so depressing the characters don't even have names.
Yeah.
They're just referred to as man, boy, and a woman. And
wife.
Obviously...
very similar to the characters in Dunkirk, for
exactly.
that matter.
We've talked about how... Yeah, that's not a happy frolic either.
Right.
We talked about... how it's not based on performance, it's based on movie they were in. she's not in the road all that much.
Right.
It's really a Viggo Mortensen movie.
But that's not how the Best Ever Challenge works.
That's not how this challenge works.
That's
it's
right.
just so depressing. Nothing good happens in this movie ever. There's not a single moment where you can go, happy. No. It is sad, and it just gets even more sad as the minutes progress.
Mm-hmm. And you love that.
Yeah. I'm nihilistic like that. Or masochistic. Masochistic.
It is funny, right? That we have these movies that are like that, where there's nothing pleasurable about the experience of watching them, but we love them.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting thing. I think that's a really interesting part of human nature and human psychology is enjoying stories even when they're oppressive, like that.
Do you think it just makes you feel better about your own situation in moments like that?
Possibly could be.
At least I'm not in the road.
That's right. We can talk about my number one now, which is Kubo and the Two Strings, which you had at...
I had number 3.
Number 3.
Honorable mention.
And an honorable mention for you. That is my number 1. I have gone back and watched this movie several times, actually. My kids love it too, so we watch it together sometimes. It is so expertly put together. The way this story progresses is just really, really smart and really, really smart character-wise. And I love everything this movie's doing. I love the themes. I love the artistry of the paperwork and the stop action stuff is just incredible. I love the voice performances. I just, there's so much I love about this movie.
Now, you were on whenever we did the original review of this, right?
Yeah.
Was that your first episode?
That was my first episode of Siftpop, was Kubo.
I want you both to know, I went back and I rewatched the movie recently. I like it a lot more now for some reason.
Good.
I really do. Because whenever we originally did it, I was like, yeah, it was okay, but I went back and I get it now.
Yeah.
So
good. I'm glad to hear that, man. I'm glad you enjoy it.
It's a great one to revisit. It's like, I've put it on like in the background while I'm editing and writing some stuff, and it's just, we've gushed about it plenty, but it's great. The voice performances in it, and just it's such a marvel to look at. And I'm so glad it's on Netflix now, and so many more people have gotten to experience this movie now, and it's kind of gaining a little bit more traction there. So it's like it's great. More people are finally seeing how good this movie was. I still think it should have won the Best Animated Film at the Oscar. I think it got robbed still.
Yeah, I'm with you. It also has haunted me because you know how I make puns in my video reviews, and I was trying for probably 30 minutes to find a pun with my Apes review that put Koba instead of Kubo, like Koba in the something, the two something, and I just could not find it. I was angry. All right, we'll continue.
Koba,
love it.
It's just not there. I just couldn't find the right pun. So, anyways, that happens. Go ahead. What's your number 1?
Number 1, it's Mad Max Fury Road, and like you said, with the Best Ever Challenge, like this isn't my favorite Charlize performance, but she is fantastic in it. And this movie with me is like I didn't love it as much whenever it first came out as everybody else did. Like I respected the heck out of it, but it's a movie that I went back and then I rewatched it, and I'm just like it's such a marvel, just like, and especially when you see the behind the scenes of it and how this thing got made, and just like how grueling it was, how much work got put into it. And then Charlize herself, steals the movie away. People don't even really care about Mad Max in this movie. Everybody always talks about Furiosa. When we get more Furiosa, Furiosa's coming. And that's what it was. And it's like I compare Mad Max Fury Road to like the San Antonio Spurs of movies that year, because it's just like it's so good. And
show up, do the work.
Even if you don't like it, you respect the technique in it and everything about it. And Mad Max is, it's one of the best action movies of the past decade, of the past 2 decades, I'd say.
It won 6 Oscars.
Yeah.
Like it's a great movie. Like I remember I didn't want to give it as much credit as it was getting before, but like now, a couple years later, like it's so good.
It's really good. Man, that was a great year for movies.
Yeah, 2015.
Oh, yeah, it was a good year.
That was a great year for movies. And we both had it at number 2, right? I had it at number 2 and you had it at number 2. Yeah, phenomenal stuff there. I think you said pretty much everything that needs to be said about it.
Exactly.
Just so uniquely its own. So really cool. Which is interesting for a movie that takes place in a universe that's been visited a couple times before, for it to be so uniquely its own. But
exactly. And I think that was it, because, it is George Miller returning to his franchise. So people didn't have the expectation of a movie, besides what they saw in the trailers. They expected, more along the lines of what we got of, like, not Thunderdome, obviously. They expected better than Thunderdome, but it is a testament to directors that this can be done. The practical effects in this movie are outlandish.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible stuff. You want to talk about honorable mentions?
Yeah.
I only have one other.
Well, why don't you give yours, Andrew, and then we'll give ours?
I don't care what anybody says. I like this movie, Snow White and the Huntsman.
Okay, feel free.
Yeah, the first one.
The first one.
The first one is definitely better than the second one.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, not what's the second one?
I don't even
Winter's Tale or something.
Yeah.
Winter's War.
Yeah, I don't care what anybody says. I think that the first Snow White and the Huntsman's movie is actually fun and a good watch.
Okay.
Charlize Theron is definitely the best part of that whole movie.
Yeah, she's great.
Mm-hmm.
She steals that movie, but I think that it's charming and
I think the first one's fun. It's fun. It's got decent effects for the time. I thought it was an interesting take on the story, that we've seen a million bazillion times.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So, no, I enjoyed that one.
Thank you, Devon.
I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. I will say it's better than the second one.
I remember
We'll just
seeing
leave
it
it
in
at that.
the
theaters.
second one's a garbage fire.
Yeah, me and my dad went and saw it in theaters. I remember he walked out and I stayed.
There you go.
I stayed for the whole thing. My dad was not about it.
What else you got, Devon?
So one that was turned on to me because I did a Charlize Theron episode of Deezus Take the Reel like a few months back, and my guest had picked young adult, and that'd be an honorable mention for me.
That's in my
I'd say
honorable
that's one of her
mentions, too.
better performances. Like I'd say that's in my top 3 of her performances.
Yep.
Very relatable character, especially for what I'm trying to do now, and I mean really all of us. Something that we can all kind of relate to. And then,
Young Adult is an underrated film. I don't think I think it's underseen too.
I remember I saw the cast and I was like, how did I not know about this movie before? I mean, that's probably Patton Oswalt's best movie.
Yeah. No, I think it's worth a watch.
And then I got to throw a shout out to Hancock.
Yep.
I still want a Hancock sequel.
Yep.
I thought it was a really interesting premise that they did. It was a comic book movie, superhero movie, and it came out like in a weird time because it was like right after X-Men Last Stand and Spider-Man 3, had both bombed. And it was like, it came out in like 2008. So it was like a time when people were like, hey, let's take a break from superhero movies. We shouldn't really do these. And they tried doing something a little different, but it's like, I think now they should try and do another Hancock movie. I think it would benefit from, the time passing and where we are with comic book movies now.
I know a lot of people really don't like Hancock, but I actually am the opposite. I really like it.
It's the ending.
But I really like the ending. See, that's the thing. I think I can understand why it annoys
does
people.
Go to a weird place,
but I like it
because they unload the mythology on you in like 5 minutes. Like, here's what's going on. Then you're like, this is a lot. But I think it makes sense,
right? Like it's not that it does. I mean, it makes sense though. Am I misremembering? It's not confusing.
It makes sense.
Okay.
Oh, no, it makes sense. It was just like the whole movie we were watching, this character study of him and like him trying to change. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, this is their Mayan gods or whatever they are.
And so the movie loses points for not being the movie that people wanted it to continue to be. It becomes a different movie in some way, right?
It does.
Is that kind of...
It does.
Okay.
And it's like, but I'd like to see a sequel of the mythology. I think it's very interesting, or a prequel. Who knows? Whatever.
I also had listed a couple others that I could get made fun of for
Mighty Joe Young.
No, I didn't have Mighty Joe Young in there. I do have The Legend of Bagger Vance in there, which I enjoy more than most people.
Speaking of Will Smith.
Speaking of Will Smith. Men of Honor is one I enjoy more than most people, and she was also in Cider House Rules. There you go.
Nice.
The chat mentioned The Italian Job.
Yeah,
so
Italian Job.
Another decent one to mention, although the original is worth a watch. Yeah, there you go. The best of Charlize. Before we head on to the rest of the episode, just a reminder, if you want to support what goes on here at Studio DNA Podcast Network, you can do that at Patreon, patreon.com/Studio DNA. Some awesome stuff happening for the month of August. Every dollar that comes in to the podcast network is going right back out to help fight human trafficking. We're working directly with a friend we have in Phnom Penh who is directly investigating and fighting these Westerners who come over to have sex with underage girls and trying to put an end to that. So we're totally on board. We're hoping to raise $3,000 to help him do what he does over there. That would pay for what he does for about 3 months. It could also pay for somebody to help him for an entire year. So know this, if you want to give to support that, but not continuing to give to Studio DNA at that level, just do it for the month of August. Up your pledge to, $10 a month or $100 for the month or whatever. And then for September, just go ahead and bring it back down. That's kind of how it will work for what we're doing with this fundraising. So Every dollar for the month of August that's given at Studio DNA Patreon will go to fight human trafficking. So I wanted you to know about that. And thank you to all those who give. It starts at $3 a month, and you can find out all the info at patreon.com/Studio DNA. All right, on to the Sift Quest, fellas. We're going to go on a quest sent to us by the listeners of the podcast. If you have a question or need an argument settled or just have a cultural conundrum, you can feel free to tweet me at Aaron Dicer or email us at feedback@siftpop.com. Today's Sift Quest was launched by Patrick via Twitter. Here's what he says. Is comedy in trouble as a standalone genre? There's been some good genre comedies, but what's the last great straight-up comedy? So I thought that was an interesting question because he's right. A lot of modern comedies are genre comedies. I even think most recently of The Big Sick, which just came out. That's a drama comedy. You know, that's not just a straight comedy. It's really funny, but you wouldn't call it a straight-up comedy. So what do you guys think? Both about the question and about, maybe a choice.
When I saw this question, I agree wholeheartedly. Comedy has been my most frustrating genre for the past 5 years or so. I mean, because we really just don't get as many good comedies. And I had an interesting conversation with somebody on Reddit. I wrote a review for The Little Hours last week or so. And it's a raunchy comedy. Aubrey Plaza, Alison Brie, John C. Reilly. They're in a convent about nuns or whatever. Anyway, so I posted my review, and then he was just like, because I said this movie had the potential to be more than just a slapstick raunchy comedy. It could have been more, and he was like, well, that's not what it needed to be. This wasn't trying to reinvent the comedy genre. It was just a simple comedy. I'm like, well, see, there's the problem. People settle for comedies now. When I just say, yeah, it's a fine comedy, yeah, whatever. It made me laugh a little. It's like, but why? We had comedies that meant things,
Yeah.
So it's it's extremely frustrating for me, and it was hard to think of the last genre-less comedy that I liked, because really the last real good comedy I loved, The Night Before, but that's a holiday comedy, so it's
right.
That's whatever. So I'd say probably my last favorite just straight up comedy, if you count 21, 22 Jump Street, if those count as
I think those
pretty
count.
much just straight up comedies for the most part.
Comedy.
Action
I guess
comedy.
they might be action comedy.
So
See,
it's
that's the thing.
hard.
You could make any comedy a subgenre.
Yeah, what is
with-
a straight up comedy?
Yeah.
It's hard.
You can't even say Airplane is not a subgenre.
No, because that's a parody.
Yeah, it's a parody.
So there is no straight up comedy.
However,
I watch a lot of stand up comedy. That's straight up comedy.
However, parody is a subgenre of comedy. I think he's talking more about genres that are not comedy that are combined with comedy. The example I think he used later in some of his other tweets was There's Something About Mary as a straight up comedy. And I actually think that may be part of the problem. You mentioned raunch-coms. Mm-hmm. I think straight up comedies have become so intertwined with raunchy comedy that's almost become what straight up comedy is now.
Somebody said that in the Reddit conversation too, though. Pretty much every regular comedy is a raunch comedy, just for the cheap laughs. And it's just
What was the example you guys gave as the last great?
I think I went back to last year, and I have a couple examples that I think, and great may be too strong of a word. These are at least good. One of them I think may be the last great straight comedy. But I mentioned Keanu as a really good straight up comedy.
Action comedy.
Sure.
See, that's what I'm saying though. You can tie any comedy to another genre though.
You can. But I wouldn't call Keanu an action comedy. I would just call it a comedy with some action moves.
Yeah, I'd say that one is pretty straight up comedy. That's about as close as it gets. I didn't like that one though.
I put Central Intelligence, which could be an action comedy, I guess.
Well,
then
we also said good. That was another.
I think Central Intelligence was good. It wasn't great. And then this one I do think may even go into that great comedy because I laughed so much during this movie. Pop Star. Never Stop Stopping.
Pop Star, I think, would fit in there.
Yeah.
The one that surprised me last year was, this would almost be another holiday comedy or romantic comedy, but Why Him actually surprised me a lot. I actually really enjoyed Why Him a lot, and I have Sausage Party right behind Why Him from last year. And, Sausage Party,
What about Lego Batman? I mean, I know it's animated.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
isn't
is
that
animated.
kind of a straight up comedy?
I mean,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Because Lego Movie is my last great comedy.
Yeah. And even Lego Movie, you know, I mean, this is the thing. I think sometimes we confuse like drama as having a good, you know, heart or that's not necessarily the same thing, because Lego Movie has a great heart. Like there's a real, you know, beautiful message to it, but that doesn't mean it's not a comedy.
Yeah.
Right? Or straight up comedy. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think there's an interesting point to be made for sure. And kind of what comedy is in the modern world.
And I think that people's taste in humor is cyclical. I think that, you know, comedy keeps changing itself and going back to old styles of comedy just to keep itself fresh, because you don't want to have, for movies like Airplane or Hot Shots, as great as they are, you don't want that to be the only style of comedy forever.
Right.
Just as you don't want the Adam Sandler's movies in the 90s to be the only style of comedy. You got to keep changing it up just so, you know, comedy stays fresh.
Yeah.
Not only that, I think comedy is perhaps the most objective genre in movies, I think, like, because everybody has a different sense of humor, you know, everybody finds different things funny, you know, like you can have such broad conversations about people with comedy movies because, like, you don't know what their comedy's like, you know, you might find you know, certain things super funny that other people just don't care for. So it's like, you know, it's super subjective.
It's also the one of the only genres that almost should be a part of every movie. You know, like even the most tense movies need comic relief or, you know, a sense of, you know, humor to them. So it's interesting in that way as well.
You hear that, Spielberg? You missed out on Schindler's List for your
That's right.
slapstick.
I was about to say, I was like, Dunkirk, need more jokes.
There is comedy in Schindler's List. There is comic relief in Schindler's
Are
List.
you talking about the gun not working?
The gun not working.
Because that is a horrifying scene.
It is horrifying, but there is that sense of humor to it. I also think of Ralph Fiennes when he's being taught what grace looks like, and he's telling the guy, "I pardon you." You know, like he's practicing grace. Like that's kind of funny. And then, of course, you know, 5 minutes later, he shoots him outside the window because he doesn't really want to practice grace. But yeah, I think you know, humor is important to most movies, at least, and so it becomes interesting in that way. I also wanted to throw a shout out to Hail Caesar, which is one of my favorite comedies of the last couple of years. So.
Coen Brothers have a very unique style of comedy.
But it's comedy, right?
Yeah.
I'd say above all, they do classify as comedy. Wasn't Hail Caesar, though.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's not their funniest movie. I think Burn After Reading is still their funniest movie. But,
yeah, I think they're comedy directors.
Yeah.
In many ways, for sure. So thank you for the question. Thanks for the Sift Quest, Patrick. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to launch us on a Sift Quest of your own, feel free to hit us up on Twitter. Just search for my name, Aaron Dicer, or you can email us feedback@siftpop.com. Excited to hear your buried treasure, guys. What's that one thing in the area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about?
I got a good one.
Yeah? Should we save yours for the end?
Sure, why not?
All right, Devon, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, mine is a movie. It's still in very limited release. It's a very tiny indie film from A24. Everybody knows A24, the indie darlings currently. Mm-hmm. And I got to see A Ghost Story for a little bit of an early screening while I was out in LA a few weeks ago. And this movie is so small. It's so artsy. Think if Terrence Malick directed a movie from the perspective of a ghost. Like, that's what this movie is.
I really wanted to see this movie.
Basically,
you are not selling me.
Okay, basically,
I'm not a Malick fan.
Okay.
So
basically, the premise of this movie: you have this couple, and the tragedy hits, he dies, and he is a ghost, like literal in a sheet with holes in it.
Nice.
He's a ghost watching the aftermath of his death and watching his wife move on, and it's just this. It's this weird odyssey about, you know, the cycle of life and death. And it's really interesting. There's not a lot of dialogue. It's very visual for the most part. There's some cool camera stuff in it, but it's just this tiny little indie film that, one, I appreciate as a film, but two, I just like that A24, like, they released this movie. It's not out there to get awards. It's not out there to make money. It was because a director had a cool movie that they want people to see. And I think that's, refreshing, because not a lot of studios do that. Like,
I totally agree.
They literally released this movie just because, like, enjoy this movie. It's weird. It's cool. It's interesting. You should just check it out.
And, it's Casey Affleck, right?
And it's Casey Affleck
now you're selling me. I love Casey Affleck.
Oh, it's Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck
also
are the
great,
leads.
yeah.
So, and Casey Affleck is in a sheet about 75% of this movie.
Very cool.
So yeah, it's just an interesting little film. Like, if you want to just see something a little interesting, look it up. It'll be hitting VOD like pretty soon because it's just doing like limited release right now.
A Ghost Story?
It's called A Ghost Story.
Right.
That's literally that.
Aaron?
I think I may have done this for Buried Treasure before, but I love it so much I'm going to do it again because it just came out on Blu-ray.
Hey.
Colossal. I have to talk about Colossal. I still feel like not enough people have seen this movie. I love this performance by Anne Hathaway. I think the concept is so clever and interesting. It is, if you like quirky sci-fi with a real human element, it's definitely something you might enjoy. So I wanted to throw a shout out there as well.
It's an interesting premise. It was a little uneven for me, but it was a very interesting premise.
It's totally even. It's about the most even movie. No, I'm just kidding. Totally get it. What about you, Andrew?
I was going to do Ozark.
Yeah, I thought about doing that as well, but I haven't watched enough of it yet to really talk about it.
I watched all of it besides the very last episode.
Okay.
But I'm not going to do Ozark. I'm going to do something else that's local-based, though. Even more local. An HBO documentary called Mommy, Dead, and Dearest.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about this.
So it's an HBO documentary that takes place in Springfield, where we all live. Have either of you heard of Gypsy Blanchard, the story that happened a couple years ago?
Only because I know of this movie.
Okay. So I'm gonna be very sparing with this because it is so fascinating that I don't want to give anything away. But it's pretty much the most shocking story of Munchausen by proxy story that I've ever heard. And the fact that, a lot of stories like, oh, it takes place around us. It could take place, this takes place in Springfield.
Yeah. Did you feel like you knew from being here, like a lot of...
I know some of the people in this documentary.
Oh, snap.
So
it's going to be a weird experience.
I swear.
I think you could best describe it by mixing... You guys saw The Jinx?
Yes.
Mix The Jinx with a medical twist.
So it's got like kind of that real world solve the mystery kind of thing that Netflix has done before with
kind of, except the mystery is presented to you at the very beginning, but the more details that are presented to you as it goes on, you're like, oh, wait a minute, now I'm understanding why such and such did this or such and such happened, and you don't really know who. It plays with your mind on what a victim is. Oh, it's fascinating.
Is it out or is it still happening? Okay. I just got it, some HBO Go installed, so
it's
check
called
it out.
Mommy
just in
Dead,
time for Game of Thrones.
Yep. Mommy, Dead, and Dearest.
Well, we did it, guys.
Yeah,
that's a podcast.
Woo. 100 too.
Podcast number 100 in the books. Thanks for joining us for Siftpop today. It is part of the Studio DNA podcast network. You can find out more about other live and later shows on the network by following the feed at mixlr.com/Studio DNA. That's mixlr.com/Studio DNA. Huge thanks again to today's guru. It's Deezus from Deezus Take the Reel. I mean, Devon from Deezus Take the Reel.
Deezus. Well,
that's a nickname, right?
Well, it's like a conundrum. Like, yeah, it's a stage name. Is what I call it. Yeah, I do use it as a stage name. I even perform stand up under Deezus now.
Ooh.
But thank you so much. You guys know I love coming on the show.
Yeah, what do you got to let people know about?
Oh, I'm working on a bunch of stuff. Of course, check out Deezus Take the Reel. That's my podcast. It's a little late night talk show of sorts. We talk movies, we play games, tell stories. They've both been on, so make sure you guys go check those episodes out. But I'm also I write articles for geeksandgamers.com now, where you can see some reviews and think piece stuff. And then I just launched my personal website, Deezus.org, where you can find, I have a blog where I'm doing like movie pitches, think pieces. You can find all my reviews, all my stand-up podcast, everything.
Well, we love having you on, Devon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking the time to stop by. Also, much love and gratitude to our Patreon supporters for giving monthly to make this show and others on the network possible. Support starts at $3 a month, comes with some pretty fun perks. You can find out more at patreon.com/Studio DNA. Lots of ways to connect with the podcast. You can leave comments at SoundCloud. You can tweet at us, comments at iTunes, or you can email us any feedback at feedback@siftpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too, so let them know about it and that listening is much easier than bungee jumping with a garden hose. Spoiler chat for this week's movie should be next up in your podcast feed, and we will see you back next week for Andrew's most anticipated movie of the year, The Dark Tower.